There comes a time when the operation of the machine is so odious that you cannot even tacitly participate. You've got to place your bodies on the gears, the wheels, all the mechanism, and you've got to indicate to those who own it and those who run it that unless you are free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked how about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by,
by and by,
in that glorious land above the sky.
Whoop-high!
Work and pray,
Work and pray,
live on hay,
live on hay.
You'll get pie in the sky when you die.
That's a lie.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, live as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he.
On November 13th, 1909, 259 workers died in the biggest coal mine fire in U.S. history in Cherry, Illinois. The mine opened in 1905 by Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad. Employed nearly 500 workers. The fire started when kerosene lantern being used during an electrical outage set fire to a cart full of hay from Muir's. The fire quickly spread to the wooden timbers used to reinforce the mine shafts. 2 shafts were sealed off to smother the fire, but this also cut off oxygen to the trapped men inside. This allowed for buildup of the deadly black damp, a mixture of carbon dioxide and nitrogen. One group of 21 men built a wall to barricade themselves from poisonous gases and were trapped there for 8 days before they were able to escape and find a rescue party. The following year, as a result of the Cherry Mine disaster, the Illinois legislature established stronger mine safety regulations, and in 1911, Illinois passed a separate law which would later develop into the Illinois Workmen's Compensation Act.
In Salt Lake, Joe, great God, says I am standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. The copper bosses, they framed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe, I did not die. Says Joe, I did not die. And standing there just as big as life, smiling with his eyes, says he what they forgot to kill went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego on up to Maine and every mine and mill, where workers strike and organize, says he'll find Joe Hill, says he'll find Joe Hill.
Republic Windows and Doors, in business since 1965, declared bankruptcy on December 2nd, 2008. The following day, they announced to their workers that the factory would be closing on December 5th, that their health insurance would be terminated immediately, and that they could not collect their accrued sick days and vacation pay. The United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America Union filed a complaint on behalf of the workers, stating that they were owed $1.5 million in vacation and severance pay, an extension on their benefits, and accusing the factory of not complying with the federal WARN Act, which requires that workers be given 60 days notice before mass layoffs like this. 200 of the 240 workers then occupied the factory for 6 days until their demands were met. A settlement was negotiated with Bank of America, which was taking control of the assets of the factory, creating a fund of $1.75 million for back pay and benefits, and a 2-month extension of their health insurance. In February of 2009, the factory was purchased by Sirius Materials, a California-based company, and the former Republic factory workers were rehired. But that's not the end of the story. In February of 2012, this February, Sirius Energy announced that the factory would be closing as they consolidated their operations elsewhere. Workers moved quickly to initiate another sit-in strike, but after less than a day, the owners agreed to keep the factory open for 90 days, while workers and company management worked together to find a way to keep the plant open with new ownership.
From 1910 through the 1960s, Washington Square Park was a hotbed of rhetoric as poets, preachers, left-wing agitators, and crackpots waxed radical before curious spectators. It was celebrated as an outdoor free speech center and a popular Chicago tourist attraction. In its heyday during 1920s and 1930s, poets, religionists, and cranks addressed the crowds, but the mainstays were soapboxers from the revolutionary left, especially from the international workers of the world. The Proletarian Party...
Industrial workers of the world.
What?
Industrial workers of the world.
Industrial workers. Proletarian Party, Revolutionary Workers League, and more groups. Many speakers became legendary, including the anarchist Lucy Parsons, the clap doctor Ben Reitman, labor wars veteran John Lohman, socialist Frank Midney, feminist Marxist Martha Biegler, Frederick Wilkes-Barre, or the Surfacer, Herbert Shaw, the Cosmic Kid, the Sheridan Twins, Jack and Jimmy, and one-armed Choli Windor.
I don't think I heard you mention Studs Terkel.
No.
But every year he would regularly come here and do kind of in the tradition of the Bughouse Square, which began in that tradition really began beginning of the 20th century, 1910s or so. You mentioned the IWW, and obviously Studs Terkel comes along later, but you know, he's the great kind of oral documentarian of American working class, books like Working, Division Street, The Good War. A lot of, because he's such a Chicago personality, he did that midnight special show at WFMT for years, and because he was such a Chicago personality, a good many of his interviewees were Chicagoans. So he would come here, they would reenact kind of the Bughouse Square debates in more recent years. He died only a couple of years ago, but I think he lived to be 100 years old. So he's also associated with this spot.
You will eat by and by
in that glorious land above the sky.
Work and pray.
Live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die.
That's a lie.
Holy rollers and jumpers.